raining and raining and raining and raining. And I guess while it was raining, the flies kind of just weren't out that much. As soon as I moved inland, like, the rain stopped. Except a huge frickin' storm came through, and I was Longview or Longreach, just outside of that town. I was camping at like a highway rest stop just outside town. And they like never get rain. And when I first was getting my rides inland, people picked me up. They're like talking about all the rain they were getting on the East Coast, and they're like, "Well, you're moving inland. You won't see any more rain." I get to Longreach or Longview. I still forget which one it is. Was it like the sign said like capital of the outback or something? I'm like, all right, that's the end of the rain. And then my first night there, my only night there, huge freaking rainstorm came through. Wind and rain, and like, I set up my tent next to, like, there's places where people set up the trailers and stuff. It was pretty hard packed ground, so it starts coming down like after I set up my tent, and I can see like water forming, and I didn't pick the best spot, so I have to like reposition my tent. It wasn't a very nice night. Longreach, okay. Then Longview's in Texas. There's a Longreach and a Longview, and I get them mixed up. Alright, one more piece of chicken and then that's dinner. Kansas, loads of rain, extremely bad storms. Can't seem to catch a break. That's no fun. Alright, screen brightness. Alright, we'll drop it down to the minimum. There you go. Annoying part of this wide-angle lens. I only had quite a problem with the last one, but this one has better optics. It doesn't fisheye quite as much. This one than the last one, and it's not so wide that it has the microphone windscreen in frame. So I like this wide-angle lens better for the optics, but it's like wider at the start, which means a bit of the screen shines through, and if the brightness is too high for the given light level, then you get someone said blooming, some light leakage, I don't know. Whatever the word for it, we get it. What was that? Sounded like a firework. It was like a pfft. Will I go to Korea? Probably at some point. Whether I do on this trip or not is yet to be determined. I tend to use, and do you recommend it? I use a Marmot Tungsten 1P UL. It's the ultralight version of just like Marmot Tungsten tent line. I used the regular tungsten for, yeah, essentially like 5 years, just under 5 years. Spent hundreds of nights in it. It's a wonderful tent. It's comfortable. It's a really nice, discreet green color. At least mine is. I think they changed the color scheme slightly. It's not quite as nice, but still, it's a nice neutral green color. It's hard to find in a tent. Tents are always fluorescent. Not always, but most are. Really simple to set up design. It's just solid. And the UL, you save a few ounces here. The color isn't as nice, it's not as discreet, but you save a little bit of weight. It's the same simple setup design with a few tweaks, but it's a really good tent, and it's not excessively expensive. Would you live in Japan? Probably. Well, if I put a lot of effort into the language, maybe I'd give it a year. I think it'd be an interesting experience spending a year in Japan. Trying to kind of assimilate. But Canada's my home, British Columbia's my home, Vancouver Island's my home. I'd like to, if I ever like live somewhere, I want it to be back home. Camping on that beach? Not on this beach. I'll find some wood somewhere. Yeah, so you're doing good tonight. I am Ray Liotta. Islands where it's at. If people can afford to live on the island, that is. Yeah, like there's still some cheap places, but you kind of got to get north of Campbell River for that, or yeah, pretty much north of Campbell River. Maybe Port Alberni ain't too bad, or is Port Alberni expensive now too? Well, of course, Tofino Hewlett on the west coast is gonna be expensive now. Whole Victoria, anywhere around Victoria is gonna be expensive. The Comox Valley, where I'm from, is really pricey. Most of the smaller towns and stuff dotting the east coast of Vancouver Island are quite desirable now. Well, I expect to spend a lot to refine it first. After a while, I feel like hard to break past courtesy and actually make connections with others. I could see that. If it rains, my tent has a fly, which is water resistant, I guess I should say. So we can camp out in the rain just fine. The most annoying part of raining when you're camping is getting up in the morning, packing up your stuff when it's raining on you. Decide where to put your tent when you're on your journeys. Usually I just pull up Google Maps, switch to satellite view, find some wooded areas, walk into it, set up my tent wherever I feel like it. That feels kind of private and tucked away. Held back on saying proof. Yeah. Most things aren't waterproof. Like truly waterproof. It sucks waking up soaked at early hours. Well, like, even if it rains pretty good, like sometimes the bottom of my tent might get a little saturated and stuff, and it gets the bottom of my sleeping pad fine. But I got enough room in there that I'm usually not wet because I'm like on a suspended, like on my inflatable pad, and I'm not touching the outer walls of the tent. So my sleeping bag's dry, the top part of my sleeping pad's dry, so I'm actually dry. It's as soon as I start moving then things start getting wet. even if it raining, not hitchhike. I'll hitchhike in the rain. It's just it can be demotivating to get out there in the rain. Where do you stay tonight? My tent. Yeah, we're losing the light here. So I guess it's bedtime almost. Was it 7:30? It does get dark pretty early here. I wish they were like a different time zone. So I wish it was like 9:30 right now, and that would mean the sun would come up in the morning more at like 7 rather than 5 a.m. Sun is saying good night. And it's saying good morning somewhere else. Or is it morning? 58 hours. Is it morning East Coast, North America? Or like Newfoundland? Maritimes? It's gonna be pitch dark, 10 minutes. We won't even be able to see you. That's okay. How long have you been hitchhiking before? What got you to start hitchhiking? 5 years in total now, 13 and a half months on Twitch, and 4 years before that. I started hitchhiking, well, as a means of transportation around my home province of British Columbia, from Kelowna to Vancouver and Vancouver Island and back, because I hated the bus. It was expensive and slow. Once I started hitchhiking that Kelowna to Vancouver or Vancouver Island route, I could hitchhike it faster than I could take the bus reliably, especially the Kelowna to Vancouver route, because I could almost always get a direct ride from West Bank, like West Kelowna to Vancouver. Getting back from Vancouver is a bit more difficult. If I'm just from Vancouver. Vancouver Island, I can catch a ride on the ferry and usually get a ride direct to Kelowna in the ferry lineup. But then I escalated it to across Canada. And then after I did across Canada, next year I did a big 23 country around the world trip. The better part of a year. Hitchhiking's great. I hate how a few bad apples spoiled an awesome thing. Yeah, I think that's one thing that made hitchhiking fall from its once popular state is a few bad instances that ruined it for everyone. I think there's a few other things. Is transportation in a lot of places is a lot more accessible and a lot less expensive, especially in somewhere like Europe. Buses are really cheap. The trains are accessible. You can get around for fairly cheap and conveniently. So the need for hitchhiking has gone down. You don't necessarily need a car, because that's quite often people's introduction to hitchhiking is they don't have a car and they need to get around, especially if they're like in a rural place, just to go visit a friend or something. And then I think the government ran programs to try and paint hitchhiking as the most dangerous thing ever, back in like the 70s or whatever. Gonna do this forever. and grow a massive beard and be a caveman in like 20 years and then go ape crazy. Uh, Maybe I'll Forrest Gump it for a little bit with a big beard, and I just feel like hitchhiking, and then at some point I'll probably have the moment where, for no particular reason, I'm like, I don't feel like hitchhiking anymore, and give it all up. New book news degrading hitchhiking. Like, if anything bad does happen hitchhiking, you will hear about it, and you will hear a lot about it. And everyone will say the hitchhiker, or if the hitchhiker did something to the person picking up the hitchhiker, they'll blame the victim, being like, well, they shouldn't have been hitchhiking, or vice versa, they shouldn't have been picking up hitchhikers, blah, 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 blah. It's a news story. It gets people's attention. It makes people scared about strangers, which is what gets people's attention. Hard-hitting stories that are like, you know, murder in the area, watch your kids, because there's someone out there to get you. Gets people's attention and gets clicks, gets views. Worst experience with hitchhiking? People that start drinking and driving. Bad drivers. Anything I want to do when I'm done hitchhiking? I don't have plans. And getting shot at in Arkansas, accidental shooting in Arkansas, I didn't like that.